They thought it was just a casual Sunday BBQ, burgers, sunshine, and laughter echoing through the park. But behind the paper plates and patriotic bunting stood something deeper. Quiet heroes wearing old caps and tired smiles, holding stories no one bothered to ask about. Roy was one of them, a big man with kind eyes flipping burgers like any other volunteer. No medals on his chest, no demand for attention, just a quiet dignity. Then a loudmouth biker named Rick rolled in, dripping with arrogance and leather, mocking Roy's weight and service like he was roasting a side of beef. People chuckled nervously. No one stopped him. Roy said nothing. But what they didn't know was this. Roy wasn't just some fat vet behind a grill. He was a man who once carried bleeding soldiers across fire zones. A man who knew sacrifice the way others knew football stats. And just 20 minutes later, as the sky thundered and a real Black Hawk helicopter descended onto the field, everyone realized they hadn't just witnessed a BBQ. They had witnessed a reckoning. And Rick? He learned what real strength looked like. And it didn't come with chains, tattoos, or swagger. They thought the BBQ was just for fun, until the blades of justice came slicing through the sky. It started like any typical Sunday afternoon in Monroe County. Hot dogs grilling, beers chilling, and the annual Veterans and Community BBQ drawing its usual crowd. The event was meant to honor the service members, raise funds for the local shelter, and give families a day of joy. American flags lined the fences, kids played tag near the bouncy castle, and a classic rock band played an off-key version of Born to be Wild in the background. But that was before Rick showed up. Rick was one of those wannabe tough guys. Shaved head, sleeveless leather vest, a heavy chain dangling from his belt, and a mouth that ran faster than his brain. He pulled up on a matte black bike that probably cost more than his rent and strutted in like he was the main event. He wasn't a veteran. In fact, he once bragged online that the closest he ever came to battle was a bar fight in Nashville. That didn't stop him from mocking those who'd actually served, especially Roy. Roy was a retired veteran, late 50s, belly large, shoulders broader than most, and a gentle, almost embarrassed smile on his face. He wore his old army cap proudly. It was worn, fraying at the edges, but stitched with memories Rick couldn't begin to understand. Roy was flipping burgers when Rick made his entrance. The bikers clustered around him, laughing too loud and drinking from flasks they weren't supposed to have. It wasn't long before Rick locked onto Roy like a vulture spots a limping deer. "Hey, Chef Fatigue!" Rick barked, loud enough to hush the nearby conversations. "You sure you served in a war? Thought maybe you just served fries in the mess hall." A few awkward chuckles rippled through the crowd, but Roy didn't respond. He kept flipping the patties, moving slowly, like he'd heard worse before. Maybe he had. Maybe in war zones. Maybe in hospital corridors. Maybe at home, where the battles don't get medals. Rick wasn't done. He walked closer, towering over Roy, sneering. "Bet that belly's got more stories than your combat record, huh? Tell me, you ever actually do anything? Or just eat the MREs and watch your buddies fight?" That's when Roy finally turned. He didn't raise his voice, didn't posture or puff his chest. He simply said, "You ever seen a man die for you?" "Didn't think so." Rick laughed. "Whatever, man. Bet you couldn't even run to save your own life." And with that, Rick did the one thing nobody expected. He reached over and pushed Roy's burger tray to the ground. Meat and grease splattered across the grass. Silence. That kind of silence that makes your ears ring because the absence of noise is so loud. But Roy didn't move. He didn't yell, didn't hit back. He just said, "You should leave now." Rick smirked. "Or what? You gonna sit on me?" Someone stepped forward from the crowd. A woman, young, lean, with a crisp posture that screamed discipline. "You should leave, now." Rick turned. "Who are you, lady?" "She's my daughter," Roy said softly. "And the lieutenant colonel of the 160th SOAR." Rick scoffed. "The what now?" "Special Operations Aviation Regiment," she replied. "We fly the Black Hawks. We don't talk big. We deliver." Rick rolled his eyes. "Cute." 20 minutes passed. During that time, Roy didn't move. He just helped clean up the mess. The other veterans kept their eyes on the sky. One of them, a lanky man with a prosthetic leg, whispered, "He actually did it." The sound came first, like thunder cracking open the sky. A Black Hawk helicopter, real, roaring, undeniable, descended from the clouds like a hammer of truth. Dust exploded, hats flew off heads, kids screamed in delight and confusion. Rick turned pale. The chopper landed in the field behind the BBQ tents. A uniformed soldier stepped out. She walked toward Roy, saluted him, and said loud and clear, "Sergeant First Class Roy Hawkins, it's an honor." Then she turned to the crowd. "This man," she said, "flew with my unit. When I was bleeding out in Kandahar, he lifted me onto his back and carried me across a kill zone to the evac site. While under fire, alone, without backup, he didn't talk big. He just acted. And I'm alive because of it." The entire field went quiet. Roy's daughter took the mic and added, "My father may look like just another old vet with a belly and a spatula, but to the men and women in uniform, he's a legend." Then she looked directly at Rick. "Some people ride bikes to feel important. Others are important, even without making a sound." Rick didn't say a word. He backed away slowly. No swagger left. No smirk. As the helicopter lifted off again, the crowd erupted into applause, not just for the chopper, not just for the speech, but for Roy. Children gathered around him. Veterans stood taller. Even the mayor walked over and offered to replace every burger that had been knocked to the ground. Roy finally smiled again. Quiet, proud, and slightly embarrassed. But no one would ever forget that day. The day a biker mocked a fat veteran, and a Black Hawk landed in his honor.